e4, e6, d4, d5, e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop d3, knight f6, knight f3, bishop d6, castle kingside, castle kingside, rook e1, c6, c3, bishop g4, bishop g5, knight bd7, knight bd2, queen c7, queen c2, bishop h5, h3, bishop g6, knight h4, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, rook fe8, knight f5, bishop f8, queen f3, rook takes e1, check, rook takes e1, rook e8, rook takes e8, knight takes e8, queen e3, knight d f6, bishop f4, queen d7, g4, knight c7, bishop e5, knight fe8, knight f3, knight e6, bishop h2, f6, knight d2, g6, knight h4, bishop d6, bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, knight g2, knight h7, f4, king f7, knight f3, knight f8, king f2, knight d7, h4, h5, g5, knight f5, queen d2, queen e7, queen e2, queen takes e2, check, king takes e2, knight b6, b3, knight c8, knight d2, knight cd6, king d3, king e6, c4, knight e8, c takes d5, check, c takes d5, knight f3, knight ed6, knight d2, knight g3, knight f3, knight gf5, g takes f6, king takes f6, knight e5, knight e4, knight d7, check, king e7, knight e5, king f6, Knight D7 check. King F7. Knight E5 check. King G7. Knight F3. Knight ED6. Knight E5. B6. Knight C6. A5. Knight E5. King F6. Knight D7 check. King E6. Knight takes E6. Knight B5. Knight A4. Knight B takes D4. Knight C5 check. King E7. A3. Knight C6. King C3. King D6. Knight D3. Knight FD4. B4. A4. King B2. Knight E6. Knight E3. Knight CD4. King C3. Knight E2 check. King D2. Knight 2 takes F4. Knight E1. King E5. Knight D1. King D4. Knight C3. King C4. Knight takes A4. King B3. Knight C5 check. King takes A3. Knight ED3. Knight takes D3. Knight takes E6. Knight takes B4. Knight F4. Knight C6. Knight takes G6. Knight E5. Knight takes E5. King B4. King D3. King C5. Knight F3. King D6. King E3. King E6. King F4. King F6. Knight D4. King G6. King E5. King G7. King takes D5. King F6. King E4. King G6. King E5.